criminal offense. To go further in depth, we're pleased to be joined first by James Morrison, a foreign correspondent and journalist for 40 years, and also by Geoffrey G. Nathan, a criminal defense attorney who successfully defended U.S. soldiers accused of international war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan. Gentlemen, we thank you very much for being here. James, let me begin with you. With our embassies and troops on high alert around the globe, what do you expect to be the reaction in those countries that already oppose us, where perhaps some moderate factions have been supporting us?
JD, as you well know, it takes only a small spark to set off a firestorm in some of these countries. I could see demonstrations. I could anticipate attacks on embassies. I think this is a very serious threat. If you remember that this same people who put out this report, the Democrats, were blaming an obscure video for the attacks in Benghazi and in Egypt when our ambassadors were killed. So yes, I believe this is a very serious threat and could indeed create a spark that could reverberate around the world, yes.
James, you mentioned a spark perhaps prompting all this type of response. Is there any one area in the world, any one nation where you think this might happen over and above anywhere else?
I think the obvious places would be the Middle East. Now, the U.S. Embassy in Iraq is very, very secure. It's a big embassy, it's well guarded. But you have embassies in Egypt where demonstrators actually got into the embassy during the Benghazi affair when there were rioting in Cairo. So I would expect it would be the Middle East. That would be where it takes very, very little to set off a crowd. Rumors are rife. People believe rumors. They believe the worst about the United States. We are the big Satan. I could see Iran taking advantage of this. I could see ISIS taking advantage of this. Al-Qaeda most definitely. It's a great propaganda tool. After all, if we say that we use torture against them, what's to stop them from now say that they will use torture against any American that they find? And it doesn't have to be a diplomat or a soldier, just an American aid worker, as you've seen captured by ISIS and beheaded. I think this could open the door to a lot of very serious things, some repercussions.
2 minutes remaining in this segment. Geoffrey, high time that we brought you in. You've successfully defended soldiers in court before. Do you think it is possible that charges might be entertained against men and women of the CIA who were following orders and doing their jobs?
No, for precisely the reason that you say. They're following orders, they're just doing their jobs, and consequently, you could call it immune. They're acting under executive order emanating right out of the Oval Office, and consequently, it would be extremely difficult for either a United States Attorney's Office or military CID to take this matter to a grand jury and criminally prosecute those who exacted the torture upon high-level detainees.
Geoffrey, we know there will be some redactions in this executive summary, but isn't it possible that some of these people might be identified by name, and even if they don't face court action for all intents and purposes, if they're identified by name, would they not be at risk?
If they're identified by name, which I would find to be highly unusual, and if you're suggesting they're at risk for prosecution or at risk for physical harm exacted upon them, I think they're going to get some good protection. I don't think we'll have any harm on United States soil to individuals who were involved. That's my opinion.
Well, Geoffrey and James, given your areas of expertise and really what may happen later this morning, we're very pleased that you both have agreed to stay with us on into the next segment. And when we come back in the next segment, we will talk more about the impact to our institutions, to the intelligence community, and reflect this against the cauldron of political intrigue that also surrounds what transpires. There's more to come with James Morrison and Geoffrey Nathan as we continue the conversation here on America's Forum. Let's continue the conversation with former foreign correspondent James Morrison, a journalist in good standing for over 40 years, and Geoffrey G. Nathan, a man who has defended U.S. soldiers accused of international war crimes. Gentlemen, again, we thank you so much for staying with us through this segment of America's Forum. It's an interesting
Thank you, JD.
dynamic here at work, both institutionally and politically. Secretary of State John Kerry requested a delay to releasing the report. The White House yesterday in the press briefing, Josh Earnest was all for it. James, as a veteran observer, why the rush to release it this morning?
JD, that is something I've been trying to figure out ever since we heard reports of this was going to come out. It completely baffles me. We know all about the techniques that were used. There have been many, many reports, news stories over the past several years about this. I think it's just because the Democrats have spent $40 million and spent 3 years or whatever it has been doing this, and they feel they've got to get it out before the Senate changes and Republicans take over. I think I keep hearing that there's a political motivation for this. Honestly, I can't figure out where the political advantage is for the Democrats. Had they released this before the election, perhaps there might have been something there. But it seems just purely vindictive and destructive, and another attempt to blame George Bush, I suppose. I don't know how much longer you can continue to blame Bush, but honestly, it baffles me. I don't understand it.
Fair enough. Geoffrey, let me turn to you on matters of the law as you Skype in this morning from Boston. Now, we assume that names and identities are going to be redacted. However, there has been a lot of comment, at least anonymously, from the Democrats on the Senate Intelligence Committee. Members of Congress, and I know as a recovering member of Congress, I'm not a lawyer, but quite often those of us who have served in the House and the Senate look to the debate and speech clause as giving us absolute immunity to say what we want to say on the floor of either the House or the Senate. It's kind of like the legislative form of executive privilege. In terms of staffers, does that debate and speech clause, that the immunity that members of Congress and members of the Senate enjoy, does that likewise extend to their staffers?
That would be a question for a prosecutor to answer. My answer would be more likely than not. I do have to say that anyone who's stupid enough to release the names of individuals who are serving their country and implementing executive orders to extract information out of detainees, and then to go ahead and publish their names would be one of the most stupid acts that I can fathom. And for that reason, it is very common for documents of this nature to be, say, filed under seal. And as a criminal defense attorney, that's what I would like to have seen in regards to this particular report. That appears to be what actually Senator Kerry wanted, and I think to just protect the staffers, to protect the institutions that are being questioned in regards to this report, the best thing to do would be to say we are filing a report, but we're doing it under seal. No one wants to look backwards in this regard and talk about what happened years ago. From a defense perspective,
this becomes the point, though, doesn't it, Geoffrey? Because even if names are not announced, it's as if we're attempting to criminalize history, is it not?
Oh, and that's exactly why a report like this, in my opinion, should not be released at all.
Fair enough. Final 30 seconds to you, James Morrison. Your background as a foreign correspondent. You talked about the Middle East being the hot spot. There's one note from Chuck Hagel. He's saying, as outgoing defense secretary, plans to leave 1,000 extra troops in Afghanistan. Arguably, was that in anticipation of the release of this report?
It could be. It could well be, because they have known this report was going to come out for some time. And so this is highly possible that this is a reaction to that. And it does make sense to do it for that reason. And so, yes, I would say that's probably a reaction to this report.
Well, gentlemen, we will see what transpires later this morning. To attorney Geoffrey Nathan in Boston and journalist James Morrison in Washington, D.C. Gentlemen, you have our thanks, and we appreciate your insights. And America's Forum continues on Newsmax TV following this time out.